Hello everyone. I have been so excited once I had an idea for a submission for the upcoming Peep Show here in Westminster, Maryland. I've never submitted before, but I had this idea and I just had to go with it. So my inspiration was the ever popular Stanley cups, tumblers. However, I did not use a real Stanley for this. I wasn't going to spend that much money just to basically cover up the brand. So this was from Amazon, and I taped off the rim, and I had pretty clear design in my mind of what I wanted to do. So there wasn't a whole lot of guessing with this other than the technique. You'll see roughly halfway through the video that I had to start over at one point. So everything I'm showing you now, though, is all accurate, and it ended up working. So I didn't need to sand that tumbler because it was kind of a plastic material on the outside. And then I just spray painted it white. These are mini tumblers meant to be shot glasses. And they were on clearance because they have like football logos on them. But I knew that I could cover those up. And so I sanded it down. I treated it exactly like I would any other tumbler. Sanded it down, spray painted it white. And then I knew that as I did the design on the large cup, I would try to replicate the exact same design on the small cup. They are a pair, and so I did my best to replicate the design on the mini cup. So I always use what I have. I hold off on buying anything new unless I absolutely have to. And so these are just acrylic paints that I had, and the colors of acrylic paint that I didn't have were purple and pink. So I ended up using alcohol inks to achieve the background. These are just going to be backgrounds for my different glitter colors that are going to be done with a peekaboo technique. So the green was a little dark, so I added a little bit of like a shimmery lighter green just to lighten it up. I know I'm off frame, but I did want to just show you that I'm putting down a pretty large area of the white. It's a little bit shimmery acrylic paint because this was going to be my background for the STANPEEP. I used the wet paint as my adhesive for the glitters. Now I have held off on glitter for quite some time. Well, I should say this. I've held off on buying new glitter for quite some time. I bought a couple little samples a while back, but I finally, once I had this idea, I knew I needed good quality glitters, and I just love Sandy's Organized Chaos, her channel, and she sells glitters. These are hers, and then that this pattern, if you will, of glitters called Bubbles, and I just loved it for the background for my STANPEEP design. Sandy does have a color of glitter called Peeps or Peep, but it was sold out when I went to buy this set of glitters. So I put down the acrylic paint, and then I put down Bubbles, and then this is called Agenda, and I love it. It's just a finer cut to help fill in any gaps that the bubble glitter left. Just gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. So I did my best to flatten the glitter down with just my hand because I knew that once this was dry, I would be epoxying over top. And so I needed it to lay as flat as possible to avoid any extra otherwise unneeded layers of epoxy. So again, replicating the best I could on the mini tumbler. This was my first time working with this volume of glitter. And it's still wintertime here in Maryland, so my garage is normally my workspace, but my family has kindly let me invade our dining room area, and this glitter is just like all over the floor. But nobody cares. Nobody cares because we're just all living our best life. So, all right, so yellow background for the Lemon Queen glitter from SOC, Sandy's Organized Chaos. Also, I intentionally started with the lightest colors first because I knew if I could get those down, there was less risk of contamination. I do end up going back over the white area with a second layer of the bubbles and the white paint toward the end of this, you'll see. So I didn't have an exact green glitter, but this one was called Gulf Coast, and it's like a turquoise. And so with the green background and then this color glitter, it worked out perfectly. Because the blue glitter that I end up using is a much deeper blue. So there definitely was enough contrast for me. Yeah, like I said, I've avoided glitter for quite a long time. I always done like metallics with alcohol inks and various things, but I guess I just couldn't resist any longer. And this is just so fun for me. Like when I'm doing this, I'm just in the zone, no pressure. I'm well ahead of the deadline for the submission for the Peep Show. And like I said, I do make a mistake, and I will tell you about that later. And I do have to almost start from scratch. But once I do that, or when I do that, I repeat almost this exact same process. So I'm not going to show that part to you a second time. So for the blue, I did actually kind of some leftover blue chunky glitter that I had, and then I'm filling in with this fine cut glitter from Sandy that I think it was called Ice. So as you can see, there was enough contrast. So for the purple background, I did not have purple paint, but I did have purple alcohol ink. Here's my dog Buddy. I didn't even realize he came to visit. So I'm just using a cut up magic eraser type sponge to apply this. You could use a paintbrush if you wanted to. I just had to make sure that it wouldn't run or drip. So again, I know that this is a background. There are the two colors, and I should have worn gloves. I was just too much in the zone. This is, again, it's just a background for the glitter. So the alcohol ink, of course, is going to dry very quickly. Too quick for me to add any kind of glitter. So I end up, you'll see shortly, I add Mod Podge, and that ends up becoming my adhesive. I didn't mention the handle. The handle was removable, but I decided to just keep it where it was and design right over top of it. And everything worked out perfectly fine. So here I'm just going back and adding a second layer of the white paint and white glitter. There was like a little bit of contamination, so I wanted to do my best to cover that up. And then, so now I'm just doing the purple and the pink on the mini tumbler, and then adding any other colors into the empty spaces that I felt were necessary. I didn't end up putting a peekaboo decal over every single one of these tiny little spaces that I made on the mini tumbler. I mainly wanted to make sure that the surface was kind of an even size. So, yep, so just regular old Mod Podge with the paintbrush, going over it. As I did this, the alcohol ink did mix with the Mod Podge, and so it kind of got a little muddied. Oh, this was just a gorgeous glitter slash foil combination. It's a very light glitter, and I just love it. But anyway, the Mod Podge ended up turning like a purple color, which didn't bother me at all. And I just kept using that same colored Mod Podge for the pink because, again, it really didn't matter. So when I go to cut my peekaboo decals out of the removable vinyl, I end up making them 2 inches in size, and I'll show you some screenshots from my Cricut design space. But I just did my best to estimate the size that I needed. So anyway, you can, make them various sizes, but other than the main one in the white area, they were all the same size. So then actually, the pink glitters I had left over from a sample pack that I had bought a long time ago. When I go to redo all of this, after I make the mistake that I will tell you about, I end up using a different pink glitter, one from Sandy's Organized Chaos called Claudia, that I absolutely loved. So the pink that you see right now is not the pink that ends up on the final design. I really didn't know what to do with the bottom, so I just took the, what was that called? Lemon Queen, and put that on the bottom. But when I do redo this, I end up using just a random like mixture of there's my kitty. The kitties only come out when the dogs are in their crates. So the dogs must be crated at this point. Yeah, I end up putting just like a random mixture of glitters on the bottom because ultimately I knew it was going to be covered up anyway. But I just wanted a sort of an even bottom, if you will. And now I'm doing that second white layer with the bubbles glitter, picking out any contamination. Pressing it down nice and flat. And again, right now I'm filling in some of those gaps with like the mixture of contaminated glitters because I wanted a mostly even surface. I was nervous about having like gaps where there weren't glitter and then the surface would be uneven, but in the end it doesn't really matter. So any of my contaminated / glitter mixtures, I just put in a baggie and saved them for another day. So this stuff is on the more expensive side, but it is so worth it. It is fast set epoxy from Counterculture DIY, and you have to work fast. So basically you mix it up, do not let it just sit there. You have to get it right on, and it is dry to the touch in 2 hours. Total game changer. It really helped me get this project done a lot faster than I was expecting. I've tried the Flynn Sisters Fast Set. Nothing wrong with that at all. I just wanted to try a different brand and see which one I preferred. I don't think I have a preference between the two at this point, but all I can say is that the Counterculture Fast Set is almost gone. The Flynn Sisters is completely gone. All right, so removing that electrical tape, same electrical tape that I put on in the very beginning, and then any epoxy or glitters or whatever that came off or came up there. I just wipe with a paper towel and alcohol. I just loved the sparkle. It's quite mesmerizing. So covering with the food net and double checking that the handle is not touching the cup turner or the table. So after that first layer, I definitely needed to do a little round of sanding, and then added a second layer of epoxy, sanded again, cleaned with alcohol. So I will show you some screenshots from my Cricut design space for the Peekaboo removable vinyl designs when I go to do this again. So for right now, you're just going to see very sped up my first attempt at this. And as you can see, some of the Peekaboo sizes at this point were a little on the large side. So when I do this again, I actually make them a little bit smaller. So I will show you the dimensions when we get to that point. I still learned a lot though from doing this. Wasn't my first Peekaboo, but it was still fun. And I decided to put a few of the mini Peekaboo decals on the handle. So again, replicating the best I could on the mini tumbler. All right, and then spray painted them with a matte white and then let them dry. So here's where do not use Mod Podge if you are doing a peekaboo, or to burnish any glitter or flatten any glitter down. Of course, I was tempted to just pretend that this never happened and edit it out. But if anybody's watching and wanting to learn, use me as an example. I watch YouTube tutorials to learn how to do this, and someone, I will not, say who, said that you could use Mod Podge to do this. And maybe you can. Maybe I just did it wrong. But I waited too long to put the glitter down. In other words, I let the Mod Podge dry too long before I put the glitter down. So then I had to do a second layer of Mod Podge and a second layer of glitter. So I ended up having two issues. One was I could not see the Peekaboo decals anymore because I had two layers of Mod Podge and two layers of glitter. So I got my magnifying light out, and even with that, I could only find a fraction of them. And very shortly, you will see that the Mod Podge and glitter ends up, watch this, ends up peeling off. Ugh. And I'm like, at this point, I'm like, I can save it. It's just one little spot. I'll fix it. But I, again, still couldn't find all the decals, and the more I did this, the more that it kept just ripping. So because the Mod Podge was ripping up so easily, I ended up ripping off all the Mod Podge, all the glitter, all the epoxy, and it went right back down to the original spray paint and some of the acrylic paint, and some of the glitter was still there. So I didn't strip it completely, but I started over, and here are the screenshots of the Cricut design space for the dimensions that I used. And I got the Peep decals from Etsy, and I'll put her link in the description. It's VMDDesigns. And here's where I had never purchased Tack-It before, but I had kind of given up hope on the Mod Podge technique. So this was worth it. It was like $6, okay? totally worth it. Love this stuff, and it just worked fabulously. Some people water down their Tack-It. I haven't found an explanation for why they do that, but because I watch Sandy's videos, she doesn't water down her Tack-It, and she's like, it's just not necessary. So I guess the only reason I can think of is to save it. Maybe you don't have to use as much. However, Sandy recommended that we put 2 layers of Tack-It once the first layer dries, to put a second layer down. Just that ensures full coverage with the Tack-It, so you don't have any bare spots when you go to try to burnish the glitter down. So that's exactly what I did. I did 2 layers. Notice I'm using a makeup brush. This helps to ensure full coverage as well, and minimal streaking, because the Tack-It will leave a texture if you use something that's not that doesn't help it be smooth, if that makes sense. So it didn't take too long to dry. I did a little tester there. That was a tester tumbler off to the right. I wasn't sure if I wanted to do this agenda glitter that I used before, or a pearl white mica powder. So I did like half of that tumbler off to the right with the glitter and half with the mica powder. And while the mica powder was gorgeous, this agenda fine glitter was exactly what I was going for. I wanted like a super shiny, bright, whitish, pinkish hue. So I did that for the mini and for the big tumbler. So we're basically at this point back to where I left off with the Mod Podge disaster. And I'm super happy at this point. And I do end up dumping the fall off glitter back in the container. I don't see it as contaminated at all. The majority of it will fall off because you're flattening out the glitter directly onto the cup, and using your hand really is the best way to get it smooth, because at the same time you're also feeling for any bumps or spikiness. This is also a very soothing, therapeutic process, at least for me. I just thoroughly enjoyed this. And it had that, laser effect that you're looking for with this particular method. So because the Tack-It was dry, as soon as I finished burnishing both of the tumblers, you'll see shortly, went ahead and weeded the vinyl off. Very creative with my tumbler rest there. This part is also very enjoyable. Just make sure that as you are weeding, you're using your picker tool toward the vinyl, not toward the parts that you want to leave blank. Because if you over scrape, then you could end up ruining that portion of the design. Not that you can't recover from it. There were a few spots where the white spray paint got underneath the decal, so I kind of tried to scrape that off the best I could. Further down the line, I will use a Q-tip with a little bit of rubbing alcohol just to get off any of that white spray paint that got underneath. No big deal. So this was just working 10 times better than the Mod Podge method, so I am sold on the Tack-It method if you're doing a double glitter peekaboo. Alright, so here's the rubbing alcohol on a Q-tip. At some point I had to tell myself I am not going for absolute perfection, so I did the best I could. Taking a craft knife, cleaning up the rim, getting off any epoxy, glitter, Tack-It. I spray sealed and also took a brush and just tried to brush off any excess glitter, just so A, there wasn't any excess, and B, I wouldn't have a whole lot of movement of the glitter. So I'm doing another coat of the Fast Set epoxy, my new best friend. I measured 60 milliliters. I found that the tumbler itself, the big tumbler, needs roughly 50. It's a 40-ounce tumbler, but then there's also the handle. So roughly 50 for the large tumbler, and then maybe 5 milliliters for the small. I did end up with a little bit of extra, but I've noticed that, oh, I'm just showing you the mixing, making sure you're scraping the sides and bottom of your mixing cup, scraping your popsicle stick or whatever stir tool you use, and then continuing to stir. I typically have to just watch the clock and make sure I'm not under or over stirring, and then just double check that there's no streaks in it before you start applying it. But I tend to have a heavy hand with applying epoxy, and I found that when I do, I get more bubbles that I do not end up popping. It's so thick that the torch doesn't get to the bottom, if you will. And with the Fast Set epoxy, using a heat gun and then a torch really isn't an option. You have to just go straight in with the torch because it's like starting to cure already. So I stop my turner and I make sure that the handle is completely coated first, because that's the trickiest part. It's not hard, but I would recommend starting with that and then putting the rest on, making sure it's nice and smooth and relatively thin. Again, you don't want too thick of a coat because then the bubbles will stay. It's not perfect, but most people probably won't pick up on it, just me and a few other experienced tumbler makers. So I tried to torch at least twice per tumbler. And then I also, well, more than twice, okay. I also made sure that the epoxy was not pooling around the handle. That tends to happen, so I just did my best to kind of grab any excess that formed there. All right, and then removing that electrical tape before the epoxy cures. Cleaning up the rim, just paper towel with some alcohol, no big deal. Love it, love it, love it. So happy. Could stare at this all day. So here's the design for the outlines. And again, these were from the same Etsy store, except the STANPEEP and the PEEPLY with the crown and the wing I did those myself with the Cricut Design Space. So I just loved watching that holographic vinyl get cut out. It's so gorgeous. This was my first time actually working with holographic vinyl. It's from Tech Wrap Craft. Got it on Amazon. The trickiest part is the really thin, clear cover sheet on top of the holographic vinyl that you have to peel off prior to applying. Sometimes I struggled to get that off, but other than that, it was easy to work with. So again, I took the Peep outline from the Etsy design, but I added the text and the wing and the crown myself. And I decided to do a blue holographic peep on the bottom of each cup. And then for the outlines for the bunnies and the other peeps, I used a different color holographic vinyl. For the large tumbler, I kept the eyes in the outline, and I intended to for the small tumbler, but my Cricut Joy, it's used, I bought it used, it does not cut out small areas like that very well. So I had to forego the eyes on the smaller tumbler, except for the eye on the main PEEPLY on that smaller tumbler. So this was fun. Once I figured out the issue with the clear layer on top, that honestly it's like invisible. Once I figured that out, this was a relatively easy process. And since I used the small peeps for the same ones for the small tumbler I used on the handle of this tumbler, I just used the same outlines for those as well. So cute. So again, all of those don't have eyes except for the PEEPLY. I just did an eye with a black ballpoint pen. Cute enough. Loved it. I was very happy with it. And now they're ready for 2 final coats of epoxy. I did sand in between the coats, but again, I could just stare at these all day. Very happy with it. I love the dimension, especially. And then here they are. So they've got lids, they've got straws. They are ready for the Peep Show. So I get to deliver them toward the end of the first week of March. And then I'll have the Peep Show information toward the end of the video, if you're able to attend. And you can vote for this one. You can vote for as many of the Peep Show creations as you like. You have to purchase the little voting chips. But to go to the Peep Show itself is free. It's family friendly. Just a really fun, unique experience each year. So again, this is my very first entry ever, but I've been going for the last, gosh, 8 years at least with my my kids, and even now as teenagers and preteens, they still enjoy it. Because there's a whole bunch of different types of submissions. There's creations with actual peeps. There's creations with just the peep design. There's also digital creations that people can do. So I hope you enjoyed it. Here's some info on the Peep Show. Their website link is at the bottom. And thanks for watching. Thanks for peeping by. Bye-bye.